Today we are going to talk about sugar. How much is too much? We're going to start off by looking at what types of sugars exist, how they affect our body, and then we're going to look at recommendations on how much sugar should we be having. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, I often recommend ketogenic diet where we reduce carbohydrate and therefore also sugar intake down to less than 30 grams per day. But that's not necessarily the case for everybody. And so in this video, we all just go through what are the recommendations and how does it actually affect your body. The main sugars you need to be aware of are glucose, fructose, and galactose. Glucose is probably the most common one that you hear about. It's blood sugar, right? That's what you see in diabetics when their blood sugar is high. Fructose is fruit sugar, which is mainly found in fruits, but also honey, for example, contains fructose. And then we have galactose, which is usually not really found alone. It's part of lactose, which is milk sugar. So if you drink milk, you get galactose. Now, these three sugars can be combined into different disaccharides. The combination of glucose plus fructose gives us sucrose, which is common table sugar. You put two of those together, that's 12 grams of sugar. Okay, glucose plus galactose gives us lactose, which is milk sugar. And then fructose plus galactose gives us raffinose. These sugars can further combine with glucose to form larger sugar chains called oligosaccharides, or polysaccharides. The most common one you may have heard of is starch, which is a polysaccharide made up of many glucose molecules. This is how plants store energy, and this is how we also store energy in our liver and muscles as glycogen. The storage form of glucose is glycogen. So what happens when we consume carbohydrates? They get broken down into their individual sugars, and then primarily the small units. The monosaccharides like glucose, fructose, galactose are absorbed and enter the bloodstream. When that happens, you see a rise in blood sugar. So let's say we eat some bread. Bread has starch, which is a long chain of glucose molecules. In the body, they're going to get broken down into glucose. So what do we have? We have a lot of glucose in the bloodstream. What's the normal response of the body to that? Well, we have insulin. Insulin is released from the pancreas that acts like a key to unlock the door to the cells to allow the glucose to go in. Now inside the cell, the fate of glucose is it's going to be oxidized. It's going to be burned for fuel, ATP. So we get energy from that. However, if we don't need that energy right now, then we're going to take that glucose and we're going to store it. If it's excess glucose above our need, we're going to take that glucose and we're going to convert it into fat. That's very important for you to understand. Excess glucose becomes triglycerides, which then becomes stored as fat in the liver and in the fat tissues. And the problem is that every time you eat carbohydrates, you're spiking insulin. And so you're constantly converting that excess glucose into fat. Now, what about the other sugars? Like I said, we have fructose and we have galactose. Fructose is unique because it's the only sugar that's metabolized primarily by the liver. So when you consume fructose, it goes directly to the liver and it gets metabolized in the liver. The first step of fructose metabolism is conversion to fructose 1-phosphate. That's step 1. And then it's converted into glyceraldehyde and dihydroxyisone phosphate. Those two molecules can enter the glycolysis pathway to produce ATP. They can also be used to make triglycerides. So again, we get fat production from fructose. Now there's something else interesting about fructose. It doesn't stimulate insulin release. Okay, so unlike glucose, which stimulates insulin, fructose does not. And even though we do see a spike in blood sugar from consuming fructose, it's a smaller spike compared to glucose. And that's probably because it's rapidly metabolized in the liver. Also, fructose is sweeter than glucose, so we tend to use less of it, so we get fewer calories from it. Now, what about galactose? Well, it's not really found alone. It's part of lactose and milk sugar. So when you drink milk, you're getting both glucose and galactose. And that's why if you drink milk, you will see a spike in blood sugar, you will see an increase in insulin, and you will get weight gain if you drink milk. And also, galactose is not as sweet as glucose or fructose, so you're getting more calories from it. So it's not surprising that if you drink milk, you're going to get weight gain, you're going to get blood sugar issues, you're going to get insulin resistance. That's why eliminating dairy products is such a good idea if you're trying to lose weight. Now, what about that sugar alcohol? Like the sugar alcohols, they're not considered sugar, but they're also not considered a sugar alcohol. They're kind of in the middle. Some of them have a glycemic index, meaning they do raise blood sugar. For example, maltitol is about 60% absorbed. That means 60% of it is going to be metabolized and turned into glucose, and then turned into triglycerides and fat. Xylitol, erythritol, and all the other sugar alcohols are not metabolized. They're considered a sugar alcohol because they have the alcohol group, but they're not really metabolized. They're not digested. A small amount might be fermented by bacteria in your gut. So this is why sugar alcohols usually are not recommended for people who are doing ketogenic diet. I mean, obviously, if you're not on ketogenic diet, it's probably fine. But I tell patients, if you're doing ketogenic diet, avoid sugar alcohols, because even though they don't taste like sugar, they still behave like sugar. Let's take a look at what the recommendations are for sugar intake. So this comes from the American Heart Association. They say that for women, you shouldn't have more than 24 grams of sugar per day. For men, they say you shouldn't have more than 36 grams of sugar per day. Now what's interesting is the Institute of Medicine says that we should have more than 50 grams of sugar per day. Now the World Health Organization recommends cutting back to less than 25 grams per day. This recommendation is based on the fact that they want to lower the risk of obesity and cardiovascular disease. How much sugar do you need to consume to develop insulin resistance? Well, that's very individual. Some people can consume lots of sugar without developing any problems. Other people will develop insulin resistance from very small amounts of sugar. And so it really depends on your genetics, your environment, how active you are. But the more sugar you consume, the more likely you are to develop insulin resistance. Here's the thing, sugar is addictive. The more you consume, the more you're going to crave it. And then also, when you eat sugar, you feel good, you feel happy. And so you're going to want to continue eating it. And let me tell you something else about sugar. Sugar is everywhere. So it's going to be in your condiments. It's going to be in your ketchup. It's going to be in your barbecue sauce. It's going to be in your salad dressing. It's going to be in your crackers. It's going to be in your cereal. It's going to be in everything. So it's very difficult to cut it out completely. But the more sugar you can cut out, the better off you're going to be. If you want to learn more about the ketogenic diet, check out the playlist in the upper right-hand corner. And always remember, eat real food, use clean energy,